Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Good Wednesday evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweller with the National Weather Service, and I'll be taking you through the forecast this evening. As you know, you can follow us online at arh.noaa.gov, and that'll get you to all the state forecasts throughout all of Alaska. Our weather info line at 1-800-472-0391. Keep up to date with us on social media. We are on Facebook at NWS Alaska, and that'll give you both the Fairbanks, Juneau, and our Anchorage office. And then you can follow us on Twitter at NWS Alaska using the hashtag AKwx to keep a regional perspective. And then you can find this show and a few other segments on YouTube. So taking a look at our hazardous weather map for this evening, we can see we do have two hazards to talk about. Our first one, a little bit closer to the Cook Inlet region, is a fire weather warning, a red flag warning, and that's for the Matanuska Valley, with obviously the dry conditions that we've been experiencing mixed with the very low to no snowpack out there. We do have some gusty winds out through the Wasilla and Palmer regions, and thus we have our red flag in effect, and that'll mainly remain in effect through the evening hours, and once we get into the overnight hours, those winds should die off and we'll see that come down. And then for the eastern portion of the Alaska Range, we do have a high wind advisory in effect, and that is from 1 a.m. tonight until 6 a.m. on Friday morning. And with that, we are expecting winds generally 20 to 30 miles an hour with gusts as high as 55 miles an hour. And again, that's for the east slopes of the Alaska Range. Taking a look at our satellite image tonight, we'll start out towards the Bering Sea and the Western Pacific. And putting this into motion, you can see a weak area of low pressure well south of Kamchatka Peninsula. And that is going to continue to skirt along south of the Aleutian Chain for the next several days. We'll see that pop up a little bit later in our surface maps. And then up here towards the Bering Sea in the western Bering, we do have an area of high pressure that has been there for the last couple days, and that will continue to spin out there until the latter part of the week and bring some colder air down into the western Aleutians, and with that some cold snow showers mixing in from the central to western Aleutians. And again, we'll look at those on the surface maps. So putting that into motion one more time, again, low pressure skirting south of the Aleutian Chain with high pressure north of the western Aleutians and just south of the Gulf of Anadyr. Now a little bit closer to the mainland, we can see our low pressure down in the Gulf of Alaska that has stirred our weather up just a little bit from our tranquil spring-like pattern that we've been in over the mainland, with clear skies remaining in place for much of the day today. Just seeing some high clouds slip into south central as we got into the afternoon hours. If you've noticed around the Cook Inlet region, some of those clouds coming off the mountains have been a little bit more like a spaceship type cloud. Those are because of the strong winds that we are experiencing at mountaintop. Those are called lenticular clouds. Not good for aviation, but they are pretty to look at. And so looking at this one more time, our low down in the Gulf, down in southeast Alaska, we do have the remnants of a frontal boundary that is still hanging in down there, bringing some precipitation to the Dixon entrance region. And then again, over the mainland, we do have this stationary boundary that we've talked about the last couple days that is just starting to bring some lower clouds and precipitation to the northwest portion of the state. So as we look at our surface map now, we can see our complex area of two low pressure centers down here. Our stronger one, majority of the impacts are from this one down here at 971 millibars. And that's bringing up this occluded boundary. And then back towards southeast Alaska, you can see there is where we're experiencing a little bit heavier rain associated with the triple point of this frontal system. Moving into the Dixon entrance region, this front is all but made it to the Gulf Coast, and it's not going to make a whole lot of progress inland. So it will become stationary and then start to stretch out and fall apart as we get into the overnight hours tonight. Rain showers have made it to the Gulf Coast along into the eastern Aleutians, Kodiak Island regions. and it's not until you get to the Pribilof Islands that we see any of our cold air turning things over to snow. Again, over the mainland Alaska, we see our stationary boundary up there. It has been fairly weak for the past couple days. It's starting to get a little bit of a reinforcing shot of some cold air from the northwest, and that's helping to just start to bring some light precipitation later on tonight. We do have some patchy fog up along the Arctic coast underneath an area of high pressure that's well to the north of the state. And then again, those snow showers coming around that high pressure over the western Bering. Taking a look at tonight's forecast, not expecting things to change much as this is a very slow moving pattern. The rain will continue for coastal locations all the way from Juneau, stretching back to Kodiak Island through Shelikof Strait, and then down into the Cold Bay and Sand Point of the eastern Aleutians there. We'll see a little bit of rain and snow mix as we get out towards Dutch Harbor, and then just rain showers out over, snow showers out over the western Aleutians. As we look at the Pribilof Islands, that's where we can find some blowing snow conditions. Nothing too severe, not too significant of reduced visibilities, but occasional pockets of blowing snow there with some strong northeasterly winds. Over the mainland, we have our stationary boundary remaining very much stationary and just keeping some high and mid-level clouds locked in across much of the interior regions. On into Thursday now, we see that stationary boundary start to weaken just a little bit, and some of those snow showers start to get going towards the northern slopes of the Brooks Range. Down over the Gulf of Alaska, our low is drifting just a little bit more to the northwest as it weakens down to 982 millibars. And with that, we do continue to see our rain throughout the coastal areas from all the way down to the Dixon Entrance, all the way back up to Yakutat. This inverted trough here starting to weaken, but still continuing to wring out any remaining moisture with onshore flow. Then as we get out to the Aleutian chain, again, weakening precipitation out here. Any steady rain should turn to more showers by Thursday afternoon. And then we see those snow showers starting to even weaken a little bit as the high pressure slides off of the map there on Thursday for the western Bering. Taking a look at Friday's forecast now, here's that area that we saw on satellite, that other area of low pressure. It's slightly stronger down in the low 970 range, but this one will stay mainly south of the area. No real impact except for mariners and potential aviation, but really this one will stay down to the North Pacific, bring some showers and rain into the Gulf of Alaska. As we look up towards the mainland, our rain along the coast is starting to taper off a little bit. We think things will stay dry for the most part on the leeward side of the mountains, of the Kenai and Chugach Mountains, and certainly dry conditions will remain in place for the interior. We do see some snow showers along with that old decaying boundary there along the northwest coast, and that snow starts to mix with just a little bit of rain towards Bristol Bay and Cape Newingham. And then finally our decaying low off towards the eastern Aleutians, now at 982 millibars, with a little bit of rain and rain-snow mix as you get farther towards the cold air of the western Aleutians. Taking a look at our temperature map today, you can see here over southeast Alaska, we did climb all the way up to 50 degrees there in near Haida Gwaii at 51 degrees, and Sitka came in at 50 degrees. Yakutat was at 49 degrees, and we saw Juneau at 43 degrees. So another fairly mild day, spring-like day for much of southeast Alaska. Then as we get a little bit closer to south central, we saw Cordova come in at 53 degrees. Homer was at 51 degrees, and Seward also at 50 degrees. Fairly nice day there with just some increasing clouds throughout the day. 43 degrees for much of the Cook Inlet region, and then as we look towards southwest Alaska, we can see generally mid-40s, and that continued on into the Aleutian chain with mid-40s, low 40s down towards Cold Bay and Sand Point, and 38 degrees at Dutch Harbor. Looking towards the northern portion of the state, we did see Fairbanks this afternoon at 40 degrees. We had Arctic Village come in at 12 degrees. Much of the western portion of the state was in the upper 20s to low 30s until you got out to the Seward Peninsula where some of that colder air remains, with Nome coming in at 20 degrees. North of the Brooks Range, we still had single digits to below zero temperatures. Barrow coming in there at -6 and all the way down to -15 here near Point Lay. And now looking out towards the Aleutian chain, we can see again southwest Alaska mainly mid to low 40s, and as we stretched out, some of those colder temperatures remaining out near the Pribilof Islands there at 25 degrees St. Paul and 27 for St. George. We did see low 40s to upper 30s as we got farther out towards Dutch Harbor, and Atka and Adak coming in at 34 and 36 with Shemya at 35. Taking a look at tonight's low temperatures, not going to be a significant change again from the last couple nights, mainly upper 30s to low 40s for southeast Alaska. As we look towards the majority of the state, south central, we see 20s to in the Copper River Basin to mid 30s for much of south central Alaska. A little bit warmer than the past couple nights as we have some cloud cover moving in, helping to insulate things just a little bit more than we've seen on our clear nights for the past several days. Southwest Alaska can expect mid to upper 30s. As we get towards the interior, anywhere from near 20 to the low 20s. And then again, near the Brooks Range, our coldest air remains confined up there. Seward Peninsula will generally be between 0 and 10 degrees. And then up towards the Arctic coast, we have Barrow going down to minus 16 degrees and Kaktovik also down to minus 16. Looking out toward the Aleutian Chain, expect anywhere from low to mid 30s. For tomorrow's high temperatures, not going to be a whole lot of change again. We expect upper 40s to low 50s for much of southeast Alaska. We'll see nice warm temperatures once again in the Copper River Basin with low 40s all the way up to 50 degrees in some spots. Mid 40s will be dominant in south central Alaska. We're looking for upper 30s to low 40s for southwest. And then we'll see anywhere from the single digits to around 20 degrees north of the Brooks Range, and out over the Seward Peninsula anywhere from 5 to about 20 degrees there near Nome. Taking a look at flying weather, we can see our MVFR conditions are mainly confined to the coastal locations, as that frontal system is really our biggest weather producer. IFR in isolated pockets all the way from Gustavus up to Yakutat, and then along the coast near Cordova, Valdez, and stretching out a little bit more so near the eastern Aleutians up towards the Pribilof Islands, with some of those stronger winds bringing reduced visibilities. As we look at our pass map, we do expect conditions to degrade for much of the passes tomorrow, with Anaktuvik going from VFR to NVFR. And Adigan will be the same. Lake Clark will go from NVFR to IFR, as well as Merrill. Looking for Rainy to go from NVFR to IFR. Windy will go from VFR to NVFR late in the day. Isabel will do very similar conditions, VFR to IFR. Mentasta will be VFR to NVFR as clouds start to move in. Tanita will be VFR going to MVFR. Portage is going to be IFR throughout the day as we have some lower ceilings and lower visibility in there with rain showers. Chilkoot and White will both be IFR with lower ceilings. Taking a look at the surface map, not a lot of change, our freezing map, not a lot of change from the last couple days. We see our warmest temperatures remaining down here in southeast Alaska, and the surface freezing line being just through south central, and then a little bit farther down, a little bit colder temperatures into the Aleutian Islands. Tomorrow's icing, we look for mainly light, isolated, moderate icing above 5,000 feet over south central, and then above 4,000 feet as you stretch out down into the Alaska Peninsula. Looking at the jet stream, again, the jet is primarily devoid out of our area here. We can see much of the mainland free of any jet activity. A weak polar jet up here, 45 becoming 85 knots over the Arctic coast. And the jet activity down to the south is very strong at 180 knots, but again, that's well south of our area, so we're not too concerned with the flow there right now. And then becoming 125 knots as it goes over the North American ridge. Taking a look at tomorrow's 9,000-foot winds, you can see it wrapping around this area of low pressure. Strongest winds east of that area of low pressure at 30 to 40 knots. Mainly southeasterly flow becoming southwesterly over the mainland. And at 3,000 feet, again, those strongest winds confined just east of that area of low pressure, 35 to 30 knots at 3,000 feet. That'll bring our turbulence below 6,000 feet, isolated moderate, mainly light turbulence there, and below 10,000 feet towards the Cook Inlet. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with the marine forecast.
Weather balloons here at Fairbanks International Airport are released by the Weather Service twice a day, and the timing of those releases are such that they are coordinated with all the other releases around the world. And that data then, which provides a vertical profile of temperature and relative humidity and pressure in the atmosphere, is then integrated into the forecast models run by the Weather Service.
How can you forecast the temperatures when an inversion is present? It is a difficult puzzle. In Fairbanks, often the weather forecast says today, clear skies, high temperatures from 20 below to 10 above, coldest in the valley and mildest in the hills. A 30-degree range. This is not uncommon in the interior winter. It's a difficult puzzle to try to put very precise numbers. We need a broad range because within that shallow layer, you go from such cold temperatures to such warm temperatures. That's just the way it is here in the inhabited elevations of interior Alaska. Well, anything you want to forecast, including a temperature inversion, has to be studied. You have to learn how the inversion works in order to forecast its future behavior. And part of learning how it works involves gathering data. And every day out at the Fairbanks International Airport, a weather balloon is launched. On the end of the balloon is a thermometer, up it goes, and we get the vertical profile of temperature in the atmosphere. And that's real good data. You can see the inversion with that. Problem is, the weather balloon only goes up twice a day. And for forecasting, detecting and forecasting the jet stream, which operates on broad spatial and temporal scales, twice a day is for most purposes adequate. However, down here in this fine spatial scale right in urban Fairbanks, we need more than twice a day to really understand the inversion, especially its formation and its dissipation.
So the weather balloons that are released at Fairbanks International are timed with all those other global releases, and they are not actually at times which are very dynamically active here in Fairbanks, which is another reason that we're interested in doing this experiment with an aircraft and also additional weather balloon releases to sample some of those more dynamically active times of the day.
Basically, in preparing the sondes, you have to take the sonde out of the package, prepare the sensors, and then you'll fill up the weather balloon, then need to calibrate the instrument inside. So that's the most important part of balloon preparation. So when we're calibrating the instrument, we make sure that the temperature of the sensor is realistic with the temperature either of the room or outside, wherever the sonde is being calibrated, as well as pressure, making sure that's at our level, and also the relative humidity, that looks realistic. We use these weather balloons that when they're filled up with helium, they're approximately 6 feet wide. And by the time that they reach the top of the atmosphere where the balloon pops, they're about 20 feet wide. So they're huge. It's hard to even imagine. After we get clearance from the FAA, we'll go outside, take the radio sonde, attach it to the balloon, and then make sure there aren't any planes going by just in case, and let her go. And the computer inside actually picks up the signal automatically. It'll tell you exactly when the balloon was launched, and the data will come processing in from there. After we launch the balloon, I'll go back inside the building and to make sure that the data that's coming in on the computer looks realistic, making sure the pressure decreases with height, the relative humidities look realistic, and in my cases, looking at temperature inversion, that the temperature is increasing with height. Typically in the atmosphere, we see temperature decreasing with height, but in these special cases, that's what I'm looking for. And then I can watch as the temperature progresses vertically into the atmosphere, as that sensor's rising, and I can see where the top of the inversion layer is. So the National Weather Service currently launches weather balloons twice a day, but I wanted to launch weather balloons more frequently than that to see what was happening between those launches. So I wanted to take a look at what's happening between that 4 p.m. launch and that 4 a.m. launch, and then what's happening between the 4 a.m. and the 4 p.m. So I launched these weather balloons every 2 to 3 hours to gain a better temporal resolution of what's going on in the atmosphere.
Our research asked the question, what will surface-based temperature inversions look like in Alaska over the next 100 years? And the primary tool for studying future projections are global climate models. In fact, they're the only tool. But they're not perfect for answering our question because we're interested in information over a city landscape scale, which is a few miles, 5 miles, 10 miles. Global climate models provide information on a 100-mile scale. So we need to get that information from this coarse scale and downscale it to a higher resolution so it's useful for us. And the way we do that is we take climate information from the global climate model and we feed it into our regional model, which has a domain over Alaska at a resolution of, say, a few miles instead of hundreds of miles. And the large-scale climate comes from these global climate models, and then we run our simulation over Alaska. We have done regional downscaling simulations for 20 years in the 20th century, from 1979 to 1999. We've done 10 years from 2010 to 2019, and then from 2050 to 2059, and 2090 to 2099. So with the regional model, we've taken these 4 slices over time, fed by the global climate model. And what we find, first of all, in the 20th century simulation is that the regional model does a much better job of simulating the vertical surface-based temperature inversions over Fairbanks and the other cities in Alaska. And as we go through the 21st century, those 3 other slices, as the global climate warms, we find that the temperature inversions in the lowest layer don't really change in strength. The strength stays the same, but the whole profile gets warmer. So this study provides a first look at what would be happening to temperature inversions in the future. We need to ask other questions like, how will this frequency change? Will they occur as often? Will the season be much shorter? There's a variety of other questions we need to ask to develop a better picture for how temperature inversions will change in the future. And our first cut answer that we have suggests that we'll still have to worry about the same sort of air quality issues, because in the near surface, the strength of the inversion will be about the same.
And welcome back to the show. Hope you enjoyed that segment. Let's get right into your marine forecast for Southeast Alaska on Thursday. As you can see for the inner passageways, mainly southerly flow at about 20 knots, 4 feet. As we get up towards Lynn Canal, we do expect conditions to get a little bit worse there through the day, 15 becoming 25 knots in the afternoon, seas building from 3 to 5 feet. Out over the open waters, mainly south-southwest flow, 25 knots and seas 13 to 14 feet. On into Friday, things are going to start to calm down. Seas will lay a little bit lower, 2 to 3 feet for the inner passageways, with winds coming down 10 to 15 knots, a little bit more variable in their direction. Out over the open waters, westerly becoming southerly and then southeasterly towards Yakutat, 15 knots and seas down to as low as 10 to 11 feet. Towards south central Alaska, up in the Cook Inlet, we do see things improving there as well. 30 knots out of the north early, but then becoming 20 knots by the afternoon. Seas at 8 feet. In Prince William Sound, expect easterly flow 30 knots and seas 7 feet. Over the open waters, southeast to easterly flow, and then again southerly down towards the Kodiak Island, and anywhere between 25 and 35 knots. Seas on the order of about 14 to 16 feet. And out over the Cook Inlet region and down toward Shelikof Strait through the Barrens, we expect 30 to 40 knots out of the northeast, and seas anywhere between 11 to 17 feet. Again, we will see things starting to calm down through that region throughout the day. On into Friday now, out of the northeast flow for the Cook Inlet regions, 15 knots, 3 to 4 foot seas. For Prince William Sound, expect easterly flow, 15 knots and 3 foot seas. And out over the Gulf, 15 to 30 knots out of the southeast, seas down to 10 to 14 feet. And then towards the Barren Islands, easterly flow, 25 to 30 knots and seas about 7 to 9 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula, we do look for northeasterly flow becoming northwesterly just east of Chignik. And with that, it'll be on the order of 15 to 25 knots. Seas a little bit higher towards the Pacific side, 8 to 10 feet, and then looking for 3 feet out of Bristol Bay, becoming 9 feet towards Cold Bay. On into Friday, 25 to 20 knots, a little bit closer to the Alaska Peninsula, southeast easterly flow, becoming more variable as you get towards the eastern Aleutians, 10 to 15 knots and 5 foot seas. Out over the Aleutians now, expect all north to northeasterly flow out over the western Aleutians, and on the order of 20 to 25 knots. Seas pretty consistent here between 8 and 12 feet, a little bit higher on the Bering side, and then dropping as low as to 6 to 7 feet for the western Aleutians. On Friday, conditions improve ever so slightly, mainly that north to northwesterly flow once again, on the order of between 10 and 25 knots, just minimum small crafts out there, and seas south of the chain 4 to 10 feet, and north of the chain we are looking for about 8 to 11 feet until you get out towards the western Aleutians, 7 to 10 feet there. For the west coast, all northerly flow, 15 increasing to 30 knots down by the Pribilof Islands. We do have a little freezing spray along the ice edge expected there. Seas building to 10 feet as you get towards the Pribilofs. And then on Friday, north to easterly flow just off of Cape Newenham, 15 to 25 knots, and seas near the Pribilofs at about 8 feet. For the Arctic coast, northeast becoming easterly, and then eventually a little bit more variable westerly flow off of Point Hope there, and we do see things pretty light, 5 to 15 knots. And on Friday, we expect northeasterly flow, except just west of Kivalina at westerly flow, 10 to 15 knots as well. So taking a look again at our surface maps to recap this evening, we do have our frontal boundary that is starting to weaken and stretch out and fall apart along the Gulf Coast, and with that we have continued light rain from southeast Alaska stretching all the way back towards Bristol Bay, finally turning to snow once you get towards the Pribilof Islands, and there are a few pockets of blowing snow embedded in there as well. Stationary boundary keeping things relatively quiet from mainland Alaska tonight. On into Thursday, once again, we do see that frontal boundary starting to fall apart into just a couple areas of weak low pressure. And with that, some light rain will continue from Juneau all the way through the Gulf Coast there, Prince William Sound, and down to Kodiak Island. And we don't see it mix into snow again until we reach the Bering Sea. Just a few light snow showers out there. Do have some light snow showers picking up along the Brooks Range. And then Friday, a skirting low pressure system clips the southern portion of the Gulf Coast, while we have just some lingering snow showers remaining off the west coast of the mainland. Thanks for watching the show this evening. I hope you have a great Wednesday night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.